Have you ever really stopped to think about how a person is, well, built? Not with bricks and mortar, obviously, but with all the experiences and skills and moments of understanding. You know, the years from 2 to 11. That's when the fundamental blueprint of who we become is drawn up. So let's dive into this incredible story of how a human gets made.
I mean, it's the big question, isn't it? One moment you have a toddler who's just figuring things out, and then you blink and you've got a kid who can navigate the world with logic and language and really complex social skills. So, how does that amazing transformation actually happen? Let's get into it.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into two main phases. First up, you've got early childhood from ages 2 to 6. Just think of this as the great exploration, the preschool years. Then comes middle childhood from 6 to 11. This is when logic and going to school really take center stage. That's the roadmap for our journey.
So, the first thing you really notice, the most visible change, is a child mastering their own body. It's this incredibly rapid journey from being kind of clumsy and wobbly to becoming graceful and coordinated. It's a full-on physical revolution, and it happens right before our eyes.
This whole physical mastery thing really comes down to two different skill sets. You've got your gross motor skills, those are the big ones, the foundational movements. Think of it like building the structure of a house, running, jumping, climbing. And then you have the fine motor skills. This is the intricate detail work, like decorating that house. Things like writing, buttoning a shirt, or tying a perfect knot in a shoelace. And the progression is just amazing to watch. At 3, a kid is mastering the gross motor skill of riding a tricycle. Just a year later, at 4, they're coordinating their entire body to walk downstairs 1 foot per step. And it's that control over the big muscles that actually unlocks the incredible fine motor precision they need to tie their own shoelaces, or, by the time they're 6, copy a really complex shape like a diamond. And here's why this is such a huge deal. This isn't just about learning cool physical tricks. Every single new skill, whether it's running across a field or buttoning up your own coat, is a little declaration of independence. It literally unlocks a child's ability to explore their world on their own terms, which builds confidence and opens up totally new ways to learn and interact. Okay, so the body's getting coordinated, but that's only half the story. While all of that's happening on the outside, something even more dramatic, and maybe even more important, is happening on the inside the brain. It's a cognitive revolution that completely rewires how a child sees reality itself. Now, to help us navigate this, we're going to use a map from the brilliant psychologist Jean Piaget. His theory lays out these major stages of how our thinking develops. For our purposes, we're going to zero in on two absolutely critical phases of childhood: the super imaginative pre-operational stage, and then the much more logical, concrete operational stage. So first up is that pre-operational stage. This is the world of a 2 to 7-year-old, and it is a magical place because their thinking isn't tied down by adult logic, not even close. Instead, they are masters of symbolic thought, using words and images and play to represent and just make sense of everything around them. So what is actually going on in their little heads? Well, first, there's the symbolic function. That's the amazing power that turns a cardboard box into a spaceship. Then you have egocentrism, the classic inability to see things from anyone else's point of view. Next is centration. That means focusing on just one single detail. It's why if you pour the same amount of juice into a tall, skinny glass and a short, fat one, they will swear the tall one has more juice because they can only focus on the height. And finally, there's intuitive thought. That's that amazing preschooler certainty. They just know things, and they have no idea how they know it. And this right here, this is the perfect example of egocentrism in action. And it's not selfish like we think of it as adults. It's a genuine belief that their own perspective, their own wants, is the only one that exists. If I want a toy truck, then of course, everyone must want a toy truck. Makes perfect sense to them. Now, fueling all of this wild, unique thinking is a language explosion. Get this, a 3-year-old might have around 900 words. By the time they're 6, that number can skyrocket to 14,000. And this isn't just learning words. This is building the raw material for an entire inner world of questions and stories and ideas. It's honestly one of the most incredible things a human ever learns to do. But then, right around age 7, the ground starts to shift under their feet, cognitively speaking. The magical, intuitive thinking of the preschool years starts to give way to something new, something much more powerful. logic. This is when children step into what's called the concrete operational stage.
And this shift comes with a whole new toolkit. They can suddenly grasp logical principles, that egocentrism starts to fade, and they can finally begin to see the world from someone else's viewpoint. Their thinking gets way more organized, though it's still pretty tied to real, tangible, or concrete things they can see and touch. They're not quite ready for abstract ideas like justice or infinity just yet. The real-world impact of this is a total game changer. This dawning of logic is precisely what makes formal schooling, while possible, it's the cognitive software you need to understand math, to follow the step-by-step rules of a board game, and to just start reasoning about your world in a structured, organized way. All right, so children have mastered their bodies, their minds are becoming logical. What's next? Well, now they get to use all these new skills to tackle what might be the biggest challenge of all, learning how to connect with other people and build a social self. You know, the evolution of how kids play together is just fascinating to watch. Really young kids often do something called parallel play. You see this at the playground, right? They're in the same sandbox, maybe with the same toys, but they're basically in their own little separate worlds. But as their brains and their emotional skills grow, that transforms into cooperative play, where they're truly interacting, sharing goals, and figuring out the complex dance of playing together. This whole process of learning how to interact is part of a much bigger idea called socialization. Basically, it's how a child soaks up all the unwritten rules for their specific culture, the values, the norms, the beliefs that let them fit in and function in their society. It's how culture gets passed down from one generation to the next. And what's so important to remember is that this is not a one-size-fits-all process. The rules a child learns are deeply, deeply shaped by their specific family, their community, and their wider culture. And the family? That's the first and most powerful teacher in this whole process. And you know, researchers have even mapped out how different parenting styles can influence this. For example, an authoritarian style is really high on demand but low on warmth. On the other hand, an authoritative style balances firm rules with actually explaining those rules and being sensitive. These different approaches give kids very different roadmaps for how the social world works. So here's the bottom line on this part. Learning to play, learning to share, learning to understand the social rules, this is the foundation for everything that comes next. It's how kids learn to make friends, it's how they develop empathy by finally seeing another's point of view, and it's how they start building the answer to the biggest question of all: who am I? Physical, cognitive, social. These three streams all come together during childhood to build the foundation of the adult we all become. The way you move, the way you think, the way you connect with people, that was all sketched out in this remarkable time. So it really makes you think, doesn't it, looking back? What part of your own foundation are you most thankful for?